Welcome to Lecture 2 for Old Testament Historical Books. This lecture will focus on Israel under Joshua's leadership. Let's begin with Roman numeral 1, the entrance into the Promised Land or the land of Canaan. Letter A, the Lord commissions Joshua. First, he is commanded to cross over the Jordan River. After Moses dies, the Lord spoke to Joshua and told him to take the people over the Jordan River into the Promised Land, since at this time they were on the east side of the Jordan. Secondly, he is promised land and prominence. The people of Israel are promised the land from the great river, which is most likely the Nile, to the Euphrates, which is in modern-day Iraq today, and from the Great Sea northward. Then Joshua is promised to be a great leader like Moses, and God says that he will never leave him nor forsake him. He is then cautioned against disobeying the law of Moses, but instead to not let the book of the law depart from his mouth, but to meditate on it day and night. And then thirdly, he commands the officers to make ready to cross the Jordan. He tells them that they were to go through the camp and have the people get everything ready, because in 3 days they would leave to cross over the Jordan River. He then reminded those Transjordanic tribes, which were the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, to keep their word and war with them to inherit their portion of the land. Their fighting men would cross the Jordan, while their women and children would remain in the land. Then letter B, Joshua sends 2 spies to Jericho. Number 1, Rahab hides the 2 spies. Joshua sent them from Shittim and told them to spy out the land, especially the land of Jericho. When they got into the city, word spread to the king that they were there, but Rahab, a prostitute, hid them on her roof in some flax, and then told the guards that they had came to her, but they left right before the gate closed, so they should pursue them quickly. Secondly, Rahab begs the spies for mercy. After the men left to pursue the spies, Rahab went up onto the roof and confessed that she knew the Lord was with them and that they would take the land. She said that she knew this because she had heard about the Red Sea crossing from Egypt over 40 years before, and that they had destroyed every nation in their path. Because of this, she begged for kindness to be done to her, since she had done kindness to them. And thirdly, Rahab and all her house are promised deliverance from Israel. The 2 spies agreed to spare anyone in Rahab's home because she had spared their lives. She then let them down the wall by a rope, since her home was built into the city wall, and told them where to hide until the men returned from searching for them. The spies reminded her that they would spare anyone in her home as long as she did not betray them. They also instructed her to tie a scarlet cord on her window when they came to take over the city. After leaving, the spies stayed in the hills for 3 days until the men returned to Jericho. They then went back to Joshua and testified that the Lord would deliver the land into their hands. Letter C, the Jordan River is parted. Number 1, the priests and the Ark of the Covenant led the way. Joshua and the people left Shittim, came to the Jordan, and waited there before they passed over the river. 3 days later, the officers went through the camp and told the people to follow the Levites, who had the Ark of the Covenant, when they saw them pass through the camp. However, they were instructed to keep a distance of about half a mile from it. Joshua then told the people to consecrate themselves and instructed the priests to take the ark and pass before the people. Number 2.
The Lord confirms his plan to Joshua. The Lord tells Joshua that now is the time he will begin exalting him. He also informs Joshua that the priests are to go to the edge of the Jordan and stand still in the waters. Number 3. Joshua explains this is a sign to the people. Joshua informed the people that they would know God is with them and will not fail to drive out the people in the land because they are about to cross over the Jordan on dry ground as soon as the priests set foot in the water with the ark. The priests obeyed, and the people passed over the Jordan on dry ground. Letter D. Joshua makes a monument of 12 stones. Number 1. They were a continual memorial to the Lord. After the nation crossed over the Jordan and arrived at Gilgal, the Lord told Joshua to take 12 men from the 12 tribes and command them to take 12 stones from the Jordan. These stones were to be placed where they would sleep that night as a continual memorial of what the Lord had done for them that day, to be told to every generation thereafter. While this was happening, Joshua took 12 stones and placed them in the midst of the Jordan where the priests were standing. Number 2. The waters of the Jordan return. After the people hastily crossed the Jordan on dry ground, the Lord told Joshua to command the priests bearing the ark to come out of the Jordan. When they did, the waters returned to the river. This took place on the 10th day of their first month, and the stones were placed in Gilgal as a continual sign of the Lord's mighty hand and the respect it deserves. Letter E. All the men are circumcised at Gilgal. This chapter begins by telling us that as soon as the neighboring kings heard of the Jordan crossing, their spirits were demoralized. After all the men crossed the Jordan River, the Lord told Joshua to circumcise all the sons of Israel. These were the ones born in the wilderness who had not been cursed to die there because of the faithless spies sent out by Moses. All the men who came out of Egypt had been circumcised, but not the ones born during the 40 years in the wilderness. After the circumcision, they remained in their places until they were healed. The Lord said this event rolled the reproach of Egypt away from them, so they called that place Gilgal, meaning to roll. Letter F. The people observe the Passover, and the manna supplied by God ceases. After crossing the Jordan, the people observed the Passover. They kept this feast on the 14th day of the first month, which was 4 days after crossing the Jordan. From that point on, they no longer received manna from the Lord because they now had the fruit of the promised land to enjoy. Letter G. Joshua meets the captain of the host of the Lord. While Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword. Joshua asked if he was an ally or an enemy. The man, who identified himself as a commander of the army of the Lord, replied, "Neither." This caused Joshua to fall on his face and ask what the commander wanted his servant to do. The commander instructed Joshua to take off his shoes because he was standing on holy ground, an encounter reminiscent of Moses at the burning bush. Roman numeral 2. The conquest of the Promised Land. Letter A. Israel destroys Jericho. Number 1. Israel is commanded to march around Jericho. At this point, the city of Jericho was shut off, preventing people from coming in or out. The Lord told Joshua that he had given Jericho into his hands and instructed them to march around the city once a day for 6 days, then 7 times on the 7th day, with 7 priests carrying 7 ram's horn trumpets along with the ark. On the seventh day, they were to blow the trumpets at the end of their march, and only then the people would shout, causing the wall to fall down flat. Since there is no context change between the end of chapter 5 and the beginning of chapter 6, many believe this is a continuation of the conversation with the commander of the Lord's army. If so, this would be a Christophany, as he is called Lord here. Number 2, the wall of Jericho falls. Each day the priests and armed men walked around the city with the ark while blowing the ram's trumpets. They continued this for 6 days. Then on the seventh day, they marched around the city 7 times and blew the trumpets. After this, Joshua told the people to shout out loud, "Enter the city and destroy everything except Rahab and all in her home and the valuables which were to go to the treasury of the Lord." The wall then fell flat, making it easy for the people to enter the city and destroy every person and animal. Number 3, Rahab and her household are delivered. Joshua instructed the 2 spies to go to Rahab's house and bring out everyone inside to fulfill their vows. The spies did so, and afterward, the people burned the city to the ground along with everything in it except for the valuables designated for the treasury of the house of the Lord. The writer notes that Rahab continued to live in Israel to that day because she had protected the 2 spies. Additionally, we know that Rahab married Salmon of the tribe of Judah and gave birth to Boaz, who became the husband of Ruth and the great-grandfather of David. This means Rahab is related to Ruth, who is related to David and ultimately related to Jesus. Number 4, a curse is placed on anyone who attempts to rebuild Jericho. Joshua declared that anyone who tries to rebuild the city will do so at the cost of their firstborn son's life. This prophecy is fulfilled approximately 500 years later, when Hiel the Bethelite lost his firstborn son, Abiram, and his youngest son, Segub, as recorded in 1 Kings chapter 16. Letter B, Israel loses a battle against Ai. Number 1, Achan disobeyed the Lord. Not everyone obeyed the Lord by leaving the valuables from Jericho for the treasury of the Lord. This man took some of the treasures, angering the Lord and causing Israel to lose their initial battle against Ai. Number 2, 36 men die in battle on account of Achan's sin. Joshua, unaware of the sin that had transpired, sent men to spy out Ai. When they returned, they informed him that only a few thousand men would be needed to defeat the city. Based on their report, Joshua sent about 3,000 men. However, they were overtaken and forced to flee, resulting in the death of 36 men and lowering the morale of the people. Because of this, Joshua tore his clothes and fell on his face before the ark with the elders, and they poured dust on their heads in grief. Number 3, lots are cast to determine the cause of the defeat. After pleading with God to reveal why they lost the battle, the Lord told Joshua to rise and recognize that Israel had sinned by disobeying his command to devote all treasures from Jericho to him. Someone had kept some of the treasures for themselves, thereby causing their defeat. To identify the guilty party, Joshua was instructed to cast lots first among the tribes, then among the clans, and finally among the households. The lots would expose the individual responsible for the sin. Number 4, Achan confesses to his sin and is stoned and burned. After the lot fell on his household, Joshua asked him to confess his transgressions. He then admitted that he had sinned against the Lord by taking a beautiful coat, 200 shekels of silver, and a gold bar. In response, Joshua sent men to search his tent where they found the stolen items. As a result, he, his family, and his possessions were taken, stoned, and burned, with a heap of stones left over them to this day. This is why the place was called the Valley of Achor, meaning trouble. Letter C. Israel defeats Ai. Number 1. They defeat Ai through ambush. After stoning Achan and his family and possessions, the Lord instructed Joshua to lead all the fighting men to the city for battle, but this time with an ambush. Joshua gathered 30,000 men, 10 times as many as before, and sent them to lie in ambush behind the city. The rest of the men would approach the city and then flee, drawing the men of Ai out of the city and into the wilderness. The ambushers would then capture the empty city and set it on fire. The next morning, Joshua's plan unfolded, causing the men of Ai to pursue the fleeing Israelites, leaving the city unguarded. Joshua then stretched out his javelin, signaling the 30,000 men to attack and capture the city. The Israelites fought and prevailed over the army of Ai, burning the city. Number 2. The king of Ai is hanged. The entire army of Ai was killed, except for the king, who was brought to Joshua. The king was hanged on a tree until sunset, and after his execution, the Israelites killed all the people of the city, leaving only the livestock and valuables as plunder for the Hebrews. After taking the king down from the tree, a heap of stones was piled on his body, and it remained there until that day. Number 3. Joshua builds an altar and reads the law to the people. After the battle, Joshua built an altar on Mount Ebal as Moses had previously commanded, and the people offered burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. Then Joshua read all the words of the law to the people, including the blessings and curses as commanded by Moses.
Then letter D. Israel conquers the southern kingdoms in Canaan. Number 1. The Gibeonites deceive Israel. Letter A. They pretended to be from a distant country. After Israel defeated Jericho and Ai, the southern kingdoms in Canaan banded together to fight against Joshua. However, the inhabitants of Gibeon decided to put on old clothing and bring old food to meet Joshua in Gilgal, and they told them that they were from a distant country, so they should make a covenant with each other to be their servants. Instead of consulting with the Lord, the people of Israel made a covenant with them and promised peace. 3 days later, they discovered that they were actually people from 4 neighboring cities, and the congregation got upset with the leaders since they would not be allowed to attack those cities because of the treaty. Then letter B, they became woodcutters and water bearers for Israel. Since they could not break their covenant and kill them, the leaders decided that they would become servants to Israel and responsible for cutting wood and getting water for the congregation. Joshua then called for them to explain why they deceived them, and then forced them to now be their servants and to cut wood and bring the water. Their answer was that they did this because they feared Israel and they knew that they would be destroyed. But they were okay with whatever they decided to do with them. Instead of killing them, Joshua says that they will then become the cutters of wood and drawers of water even until that day. Secondly, Gibeon falls under attack. When the king of Jerusalem found out what the Gibeonites did, he was greatly afraid because the men of Gibeon were great warriors. So he banded together with 4 other Amorite kings to encamp around Gibeon and make war with it. Gibeon sent word to Joshua of what was happening, so Joshua took his soldiers to go do battle against the 5 kings, and the Lord confirmed to Joshua that they will all be delivered into his hands. Thirdly, the sun and moon stand still. When Joshua arrived, the Lord caused the enemies to panic, and they began to flee. But the Lord brought down great hailstones upon them, so that more men died from the hailstorms than by the actual men in Israel. During the battle, Joshua prayed that the sun and moon would stand still in Gibeon, and it actually did for almost an entire day until they completely defeated the enemy. They then all returned to Gilgal. Fourthly, the 5 kings are executed. The 5 kings that attacked Gibeon fled from the battle and hid in a cave in a nearby city, but they were discovered. Joshua then had large stones placed over the mouth of the cave until the rest of the army could be defeated. Afterwards, they returned to the cave, took the kings out, had the leaders place their feet on their necks, killed them, hanged them in a tree until evening, and then buried their bodies in the cave where they remain until that day. Joshua then destroyed the city where they were all hiding, as he had done to Jericho. And number 5, Joshua continues his conquest of Canaan. In this section of Scripture, we find out that Joshua defeated Libnah as he had done to Jericho. Then he defeated Lachish as he had done to Libnah, as well as to Gezer when its king came up against him to Lachish. Then he defeated Eglon as he had done in Lachish, Hebron as he had done in Eglon, Debir as he had done to Hebron and to Libnah. He ended up taking over the entire southern part of Canaan from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and all the country of Goshen as far as Gibeon. This was because the Lord fought for Israel. After this, they then returned back to Gilgal. And letter E, Israel conquers the northern kingdoms in Canaan. Jabin, the king of Hazor, banded together with other northern kings to make an army in number like the sand, with very many horses and chariots to do battle against Joshua. The Lord told Joshua to not be afraid, because they will all be slain, and they will even hamstring their horses and burn their chariots. And Joshua did just that. Then Joshua went to Hazor and the other places of the kings that came to war against them, defeated them, and burned Hazor to the ground. They also took all the livestock and the plunder from those cities and killed all the inhabitants as Moses had commanded Joshua to do. After this, he turned his attention to the other kings in the north and destroyed them all in battle, including almost all of the Anakim, also known as giants. The same giants that they were originally afraid of 45 years earlier when the 12 spies went into the land. And finally, letter F. The 31 kings Israel conquered are listed. Now, there's no need for me to go into all of these. You can just read them yourself. And Roman numeral 3, the division of the promised land, the land of Canaan. Letter A, Joshua is instructed to divide the land. The chapter starts off with us finding out that Joshua is old and advanced in years, and then details the areas in Canaan yet to be conquered by Israel. In spite of this, the Lord still wanted Joshua to divide the land for the tribal inheritances as he had commanded for the remaining 9.5 tribes. The Transjordanic tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh already received their land east of the Jordan River from Moses, and the tribe of Levi would not receive land as an inheritance, since the offerings, which was basically continual food, were their inheritance. Then letter B, Caleb receives Hebron for an inheritance. The other 9.5 tribes would receive their inheritance by lot, with the tribe of Levi not receiving an inheritance, and Joseph's inheritance being divided between his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Meanwhile, Caleb of the tribe of Judah came to Joshua and reminded him of how Moses promised him the land he spied out 45 years ago when he was only 40 years old because of his good report. And he even makes a statement that even though he is now 85, he was just as strong as he was back then. Joshua blessed Caleb and gave him Hebron, the land of the Anakim, or the land of the giants, because he completely followed the Lord. This would also become one of the cities of refuge and used for the Aaronic priests. Letter C. Judah receives the portion of the land. Here is when we find out that Caleb drove out all 3 sons of Anak, which were giants, from Hebron. Then he went to another city and promised his daughter Achsah to whoever captured it. Othniel, who was Caleb's nephew, captured the city, so he got to marry Achsah. But when she came to Caleb, she asked him for springs of water as a land inheritance, and Caleb granted that request. Judah eventually drove out all of the inhabitants of their apportioned land, except for the Jebusites, who remained in Jerusalem until that day. Letter D. Ephraim and Manasseh receive their portion of the land. Number 1. Ephraim fails to drive out the Canaanites in Gezer. Although they didn't drive them out, they did force them into labor when they were strong enough. Secondly, the daughters of Zelophehad received their inheritance. The 5 daughters reminded Joshua and Eleazar the high priest of Moses' command from the Lord that they would receive a portion of land as an inheritance, since their father did not have any sons. Thirdly, Manasseh also fails to drive out the Canaanites, but, like Ephraim, they forced them into forced labor when Israel got strong enough. And number 4, Ephraim and Manasseh asked Joshua for more land. The tribes of Joseph then came to Joshua and complained that since they were a numerous people, they deserved more of an inheritance. So Joshua told them to go into the hills and drive out the people, and that would be their land. They replied that the Canaanites in the hills had chariots of iron. But Joshua basically told them that if they wanted more land, then they could take it from them in spite of their chariots. Letter E. The remaining tribes received their portion of the land. Before dividing up their land, the tent was set up in Shiloh, and Joshua addressed the remaining 7 tribes. He challenged them to send 3 men from each tribe out into the land, write down a description of that land, and bring it back to him in order to cast lots and then distribute. Number 1. Benjamin receives their portion of the land. Benjamin was the first tribe to receive their land after the men returned with the descriptions. Secondly, Simeon received their portion of the land. Their land was in the midst of the land of Judah, since Judah's portion was too large for them. Thirdly, Zebulun receives their portion of the land, then Issachar, Asher, and Naphtali. Then Dan received their portion of the land. Interestingly, their territory was actually lost to them, but they went up and fought against Leshem and took it back. And finally, Joshua receives his portion of the land. Joshua received the city of Timnath-Serah, which was a city in the hill country of Ephraim, his tribe.
Letter F. The 6 cities of refuge are appointed. These cities were established as places of safety for individuals who unintentionally took a life. Someone fleeing to a city of refuge could receive a fair trial, and if found innocent of intentional murder, they were required to remain in the city until the high priest's death, after which they could return to their land. However, if found guilty of murder, the avenger of blood, typically a family member of the deceased, was allowed to execute them. If the individual was killed by the family while on the way to the city, no action would be taken against the family. However, once the individual reached the city, they were protected and untouchable until after the trial. These cities were strategically located across the land, evenly distributed on both sides of the Jordan River to ensure accessibility for all. Letter G. Cities and pastures are given to the Levites for inhabitants. The heads of each Levite clan approached Eleazar and Joshua, reminding them of Moses' promise that the Levites would receive cities to live in and pasture lands for their livestock. Following the Lord's command, they were granted cities and pastures spread throughout the land. In total, the Levites received 48 cities with their surrounding pasture lands. The chapter concludes with a powerful declaration. The Lord fulfilled his promise by giving Israel all the land he had sworn to their ancestors. They experienced rest on every side, with none of their enemies standing against them, as the Lord gave them victory and peace. Letter H. The Transjordanic tribes almost cause a civil war. Number 1. Joshua sends them back over the Jordan. Joshua blessed the Transjordanic tribes for keeping their promise to Moses and fighting alongside the other tribes. He then instructed them to return to their land and reminded them to obey the law of Moses, to love the Lord, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, and to cling to and serve the Lord with all their heart and soul. Additionally, Joshua sent them back with much wealth and livestock to be divided among themselves, a reward for their faithfulness and service. Number 2. They build an altar by the Jordan. When the 2.5 tribes reached their land, they built a large altar by the Jordan River. This action upset the other tribes, who believed it was a rebellion against the Lord. In response, the tribes gathered at Shiloh and prepared to go to war against them. To resolve the matter, they sent Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, along with 10 chiefs to confront the 2.5 tribes. Phinehas questioned them, expressing concern that their actions might provoke the Lord's anger and bring punishment on all of Israel. The 2.5 tribes explained that they had not rebelled against the Lord, but had built the altar as a witness to their unity with the other tribes and as a reminder for future generations that they all worship the same God. Reassured by this explanation, Phinehas and the chiefs reported back to the other tribes, and everyone was pleased, causing them to abandon any plans for war. The 2.5 tribes then named the altar Witness, because it served as a testament to their shared faith and devotion to the Lord. Roman numeral 4. The challenge in the Promised Land. Letter A. Joshua delivers a charge to Israel. Since Joshua was very old, he gathered all the elders, heads, judges, and officers of Israel to deliver a final charge. Number 1. They were to keep and do all that was written in the book of Moses. Number 2. They were not to intermarry with the nations remaining among them. Joshua warned the people against intermarriage because of the idolatry of these nations. He instructed them to never swear by or bow down to their pagan gods. But he also said they should not even mention their names. Number 3, they were to cling to the Lord. Number 4, they were to love the Lord their God. Joshua warned that if the people disobeyed this command, the Lord would no longer drive out the nations around them, and those nations would become a snare and a trap, like thorns in their eyes. He reminded them that just as God had faithfully kept his promises of good to those who followed him, he would also keep his word regarding the judgment he would bring upon them if they turned away from him. Letter B. Joshua reminds Israel of their heritage. He began by recounting their history, reminding them that Abraham was once a pagan whom the Lord called to serve him. Abraham was given Isaac, and Isaac was given Jacob and Esau. During the famine, Jacob and his children went into Egypt. The Lord then plagued Egypt and sent Moses and Aaron to bring Israel out. The Lord parted the Red Sea, providing deliverance and placing distance between Israel and the Egyptian army. Then, in the wilderness, the Lord delivered them from many opposing armies. He also would not listen to Balaam when Balak, king of Moab, attempted to have Israel cursed. Finally, Joshua reminded them how the Lord gave them victory in Canaan after they crossed the Jordan, fulfilling his promises and granting them land they had not labored for, and cities they did not build. Letter C. Joshua makes a covenant with Israel. He urged the people to put away any other gods and to choose whom they would serve, boldly declaring that as for him and his house, they would serve the Lord. The people responded with a promise that they would not forsake the Lord to serve other gods, acknowledging all that God had done for them. Joshua then took the words of their covenant, wrote them in the book of the law, likely the book we now call Joshua, and set up a large stone as a witness to their covenant with the Lord. This served as a lasting reminder of their commitment to serve and obey God. And finally, letter D. Joshua and Eleazar die. Joshua passed away at the age of 110 and was buried in Timnath-Serah, the city of his inheritance in the hill country of Ephraim. During Joshua's lifetime, Israel served the Lord faithfully. The bones of Joseph, which had been brought out of Egypt, were also buried at Shechem in the land Jacob had purchased from Hamor. Additionally, Eleazar, the son of Aaron, died and was buried in Gibeah, the town of his son, Phinehas, located in the hill country of Ephraim.
And that brings us to the end of Lecture 2 for Old Testament historical books.